Even Christmas isn't safe from the coronavirus pandemic. The CDC recommends that people celebrate virtually this year or only with members of their own household. Professor Laurie Santos created the most popular class in Yale University's history. It is called Psychology and the Good Life. She also hosts the Happiness Lab podcast, and she joins us now with ideas to make the most of our virtual gatherings. Professor, good morning. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me on the show.
So you've said happy people take time for social connection. How can we do that now, given our current situation?
Well, I think most of our social connection, except with those within our family, have to take place virtually, which isn't great. I mean, it's worth acknowledging that this, sucks. This wasn't the holiday season we planned. But the cool thing is that we have lots of tools that we can use to connect with one another, right? Zoom happy hours, like, FaceTime New Year's celebrations, like, Netflix parties. These are all ways that we can connect with one another and try to be social even though we're not physically together.
I have a very close-knit family, Laurie, and it's been really hard because everyone lives in different places. We've got Canada, Minnesota, Washington State, California. The virtual happy hour got a little old. So this week, we ended up doing a scavenger hunt. I was skeptical at first. It turned into one of the most fun things. So as long as you get creative with some of this stuff, I think it really can bring a lot of joy to people.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things we forget. We get used to doing Zoom calls at work. And at work, it's very formal. You're sitting there, facing each other and stuff. But that's not how family and friend activities work, right? You need to make it a little less formal, right? You need to get a little bit creative. And sometimes that means treating your Zoom call a little bit different than you would at work. These days when I'm Zooming with family members over dinner, like I get up, if I'm going to make a drink, I bring the cocktail stuff and, get it set up right there, right? Try to bring in the sort of interactions that you would normally have over Zoom, that you normally have in real life over Zoom, and then you can make that social event much more fun.
Professor Santos, Jericka Duncan here. I want to switch gears a little bit. I know that you talk about your class being one of the toughest ones when you talk about practicing happiness and saying it's not about being aware, but it's also about actually doing the things day in and day out to make sure you stay less stressed and happy. What #1 tip would you give our viewers and to us to remain happy? What should we be practicing?
Well, the easiest one is to take control over something that we can all take control over, which is just our breath. We talk about taking a deep breath when you're anxious, but the research shows that that activates your sympathetic nervous system. Like it really can allow you to shut off your fight or flight system and sort of turn on that rest and digest system, which we all need. Another thing you can do is to take time for gratitude, right? In tough times, we don't often think about counting our blessings, but research shows that the simple act of listing things you're grateful for can really boost your mood. Finally, another thing you can do is to sort of take time to think about other people. When we're in challenging times, we can get stuck on thinking about ourselves, self-care, treat yourself. But as you talked about earlier in the show, the act of doing kind things for others, doing things outside of yourself, becoming other-oriented, that's a real boost for happiness. And then, the last thing I always suggest is that when times are tough, it's worth admitting that times are tough. Don't pretend that there's not going to be sadness and anger and anxiety over this holiday season. Really take time to notice and feel those emotions. That's part of happiness science, too.
And Jamie mentioned having a Zoom scavenger hunt. Professor, what other Zoom activities, for those of us who are a little Zoom fatigued, would you offer up?
Yeah, well, I think, again, it involves getting creative. One thing is to try to do an activity together. This year, this is no spoilers to my family who's watching right now, but I'm mailing out little gingerbread kits. And so each of us, in our own town is going to be doing our own gingerbread kit, and we can kind of decide who did it better. Things like Netflix parties, even games, like that you can play over Zoom. These are just fun ways to kind of get to know each other a little bit better and to make the best use of our time. A final way to get creative is really to bring in people you wouldn't normally bring in, right? Our dinner table live is kind of constrained, right? You can't bring people from all over the world from different time zones, but bring a friend from high school that your family hasn't seen in a long time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Santos. We appreciate it.